Hello and warm welcome to this lecture about critical response process. We are at the Academy of Music and Drama in Gothenburg. Technique. Hello and warm welcome to this lecture about critical response process. We are at the Academy of Music and Drama, Gothenburg University. We are in one of our more intimate rooms here at the school. I'm Jonas Simonson, Program Director for the World Music Program, and with me here today I have Melin, also Program Director for the Acting Program, and we also have students from the Acting Program here. Warm welcome. We will guide you for 1 hour now ahead.
Opinions, criticism, and God help us, reviews. I don't know what it was like for you, but when I started out as an actor, I had a number of approaches to deal with these things. I laughed them off, I blocked them, I went to counterattack, I totally ignored them. None of those made me any good in the aspect of making use of other person's opinions. So, what are your experience about these kind of situations? How do you deal with criticism and opinions?
I usually think I'm quite good with taking criticism, but I think it depends on how people say it and why they say it. If it's to help my work get better or just to I don't know, say bad stuff about me.
Sometimes I simply block it or try to block it. Usually not succeeding well.
I think that you sometimes get some words, like just a simple word, you have to do this, and then you think, okay, I will try, and then when you try to do it in your work, you don't know what that word actually means in your work. And that, I think, is,
But also, if people say something negative about your work, it's more easy for me to be like, oh, I have to do something different. And the positive stuff just goes away, and I just keep focusing on the negative stuff.
So the negatives gets a bigger part.
Yeah, exactly.
How many of you get stressed when this situation comes? You performed, you made a show, and then coming and running to you, and they're going to say things. Is it nice? Is it like, I wonder what they're going to say, or is it stressful? Or how do you deal with what you remember?
I have a situation where I was in a play about a year ago where my family came to approach me afterwards, and it was all joyous, and of course they're not going to give me any bad, they're going to be very gentle towards me, but I remember that I'm very attentive to everything they say and to try and read it, what they actually mean. But also, I do have this guard. But I do remember that I was so surprised, and the only thing I remember of what they said was my grandma, who is a very nice person, very nice, will never say anything bad about anyone, suddenly comes out with this about just one person in the play that she hated. That she and she couldn't, and she thought it was awful, and that's all I remember. How she just suddenly something came out from her that I'd never heard before, and that's the only thing I remember from it. And I don't think she meant any harm by it, but it was just some emotion that she needed to get out, and that was also a friend of mine, so I also took it kind of personally, and so it was a strange situation, but that's the only thing I remember. Don't remember what the others said.
So it's hard to remember, and it's hard to get the positive use from these moments, how to go on with your work and how to become a better actor from what they say. So, what is the solution? Well, our solution, it's critical response process.
As we heard from the students, when working with learning in creative processes, we need a specific and detailed language to describe different qualities in the work and to be specific about fields for improvements. When you have opinions about the artwork, then what? Opinions are needed, but how to present them? Liz Lehrman's critical response process is a method for giving and getting feedback on work in progress. It's designed to leave the maker eager and motivated to get back to work. It is about trying to find out what is really going on with the artist, to care about the person you are giving feedback.
So, which qualities do we get from critical response process? Well, we get a transfer of ownership to the artist from experts and audience. We get receptivity, helping the artist not being defensive. Where defensiveness starts, learning stops. We get awareness rising for all participants. Everyone in the room practice to listen and to express themselves. In the way you express yourself about others, you will also form your expressions about yourself. We get pluralism. The different opinion is a potential. Let the artist hear the responders and the responders hear the artist and each other. Pluralism is a great way to connect with new dimensions. And it helps the teachers not to be the only one responsible. We get an increased quality in question, learning to ask open and neutral questions. And it focuses on the material and the artist and not, for example, to debate on taste and aesthetic values. We get honesty. You are supposed to answer the questions as truthfully as possible. It is called critical response process. It is about opinions. It's not about sitting in a circle and be nice to each other. But, of course, there's no need for cruelty. And it creates a calm process. There are roles to play, there's a protocol to follow, and a facilitator who keeps everything and everybody on track.
There is 3 roles: the artist or the maker, the responder or response group, and the facilitator. The artist offers a work in progress for review and feels prepared to question that work in a dialogue with other people. The responder engages in dialogue with the artist, with a commitment to the artist's intent to make excellent work. And the facilitator, who is leading the whole process. The facilitator initiates each step, keeps the process on track, and works to help the artist and responders use the process to frame useful questions and responses.
And there's 4 steps. The first one is statement of meaning. Second, artist as questioner. Third, responders' questions. Fourth, permitted opinions. And there is a closure.
So to step 1, statements of meaning. Here the responders state what was meaningful, evocative, interesting, exciting, and or striking in the work they have just witnessed. Here you address the communicative power of the work just presented. It makes many involved. If possible, let everybody say something. It is positive for the process if various types of experiences and observations are told. Nothing is too small to notice. Step 1 should be framed in a positive light. You filter out your negativity. Wait with opinions of discomfort. There is a place for them later in the process. Opinions can be told in step 4, or the responder can try to rephrase them as questions in step 3.
Something more about step 2, the artist as questioner. The artist asks questions about the work. In answering, responders stay on topic with the question and express opinions in direct response to the artist's questions. The more artists clarify their focus and thoughts on what they want to achieve, the more intense and deep the dialogue becomes. It's a facilitator's job to make sure that the artist gets something with her from the process to keep working on. To prepare this step, the facilitator can talk to the artist in advance, together trying to find out what's interesting regarding the next step in the artist's creative process. A guideline as an artist to prepare for critical response process is to ask yourself, what is my worries? What do I excuse?
Step 3. Questions from responders. Here responders ask questions about the work and the artist responds. Questions should preferably be neutral and open. The questions are neutral when they do not have an opinion couched in them, and they are open when you cannot answer yes or no to the question. So instead of saying it takes too long, which is an opinion, or why are your performances always so long, which is a question that contains an opinion, a person can ask, what are your thoughts on the length of the piece? Other questions could be, what did you want to accomplish in the last section? Or tell us about the most important ideas that you want to use to get along with and how they are represented in the performance. Examples of how you can start a neutral question could be, what are your thoughts on? How have you worked with? And could you tell us about? In step 3, the responder may take the opportunity to rephrase an opinion by making the opinion a neutral question instead of saving it for step 4.
Step 4. Permissioned opinions. Responders state opinions given permission from the artist. The artist has the option to say no. The view must be offered to the artist. The listener first mentions the subject and then asks the artist for permission to express it. For example, I have an opinion about the tempo. Do you want to hear it? When you know the form well, you can also jump between steps. Rather often it occurs a need to go back to step 3, for example. Very often it's enough to tell your opinion and letting the artist decide how to solve it. If you still have a need to tell your solution, separate that from the opinion and ask the artist if they would like to hear that as well.
And finally, we have the closure. As a follow-up, the facilitator can ask the artist, what do you bring from this session? What is your next step in the process? And when will that happen? If there is more time, the facilitator also can ask the response group how they have experienced the session.
So now we will show you a session. Due to time frame, it's something we filmed last week. You will meet a group of folk musicians heading for a big concert. In the process of preparing for it, they made a smaller concert. After that, they did critical response process with their peers. You will only see a small part of the second tune from that concert and see some pics from the concert as well. And also the session will be edited. So it will circle around that tune to make it easier for you to follow. The session takes 22 minutes. And after that, we continue live from here. So stay tuned and enjoy.
Very welcome everybody, and thank you very much for your performance. We will now do a critical response process with one of the tunes you played at the concert. For us it was the second tune in the concert. And we start with the first step of critical response process. Step 1, statements of meaning. That means that you tell about what was meaningful, interesting, inspiring for you.
To me it was inspiring to see like a school performance, which this also is, but presented in the way of like a band. It was not, I mean, we know that Sofia is the teacher in this class, but still you presented it as we are a band doing this together. And I personally like that kind of presentation.
For me, I felt a joy, and I felt like understanding between each other. But I also felt that even though it's maybe quite new music to many people. Felt like you really had worked it out together.
You had like a lot of energy going on, and like in the fast parts, like really, but it's like like you kept it in the rubato parts too, and that was really interesting because I think it's kind of hard.
Time signature in the music, which in my experience can be very tricky when you deal with, you know, odd time signatures, and it felt very both solid, but mostly that you were really played it together.
Okay, so let's go to step 2. Step 2, the opportunity for the artist to pose questions, preferably open and neutral questions, meaning that the question cannot be answered with a yes or no.
Okay, I have a question about the length of the composition. What do you think about the length?
I didn't think it was too long. It was because you performed it so well, so everything was so interesting, and it had so different bits and pieces, so it was not too long for me.
You kept up the energy. I felt like you kept up the energy, so because you had the energy going, I think you could play as long as you want almost, just as long as the energy is up there.
Do you have any thoughts about intonation of the performance?
My thoughts about it was like when the pitch wasn't perfect, which it wasn't some time, but still it was very good. But when it wasn't, my thought was that maybe it's like when you practice this kind of music in different kind of rooms with different kind of feedback from the monitors and the room itself, that makes it harder and to focus your listening, and that is an experience I have myself also. But yeah, since you asked this question, that is a thing that I thought of, and like how like more for myself also, like how can we, because this is a quite general problem, and how can we practice on not seeing it as a problem, but like yeah, how do we practice this kind of thing, since it's about more about room than actually the musicians or the group.
So how did you experience our comfort level on the stage?
That wasn't something I thought about. And also like your body language on stage was really relaxed. So I felt that you had done this a lot of times.
I felt that you felt really comfortable as a group playing the tunes, tunes. However, I felt that sometimes I felt that maybe each and every one of you were maybe a little unsure about the repertoire. But as a group and in general, I felt it was not. I didn't experience it as a problem. It felt you felt comfortable playing it together.
Step 3, the response group put questions to the artist, open and neutral here as well. I also remind you about that if you have a strong opinion about the thing you just saw, you can rephrase that as an open and neutral question, that you still address the topic, but you give the artist the opportunity to say their view upon the topic.
So I have a question about the presentation. Why did you choose to lie about the lyrics?
It was fairly spontaneous. I think I felt a bit bad as a teacher that I didn't give them the translation for one of the songs until yesterday at 10 in the evening. which meant that we had been singing it without actually knowing what it was about. And then we just joked that we could just say that if we sing the wrong text on the first song, we can just say that it's a special dialect between Macedonia and Bulgaria if we sing wrong words and stuff, which we all did at some point. So we were basically just taking it a bit in that direction. Then I think we were inspired by each other to lie a little bit.
How have you been working with the time signature of the tunes to make it feel, or maybe that's enough of a question. How have you been working with the time signature?
We have worked a lot with the 5/8. We had different exercises that involved our bodies as well. We danced and then we clapped, and yeah, 5/8 actually was the most comfortable rhythm, or the rhythm that we focused the most on, and we put a lot of time on doing different exercises, and of course we played the tunes many times.
Back to the last step, like the question about the intonation and rehearsing in a room and then performing in another room. What are your thoughts about that?
In the rehearsals, we always are sitting or standing in a pretty small circle, and most of the time we have the same places in the room because of, I don't know, just because we got used to it, or because of the placement of the bass amplifier maybe. And then singing together in that formation can feel really nice, because then we can hear each other, and then all of a sudden placing ourselves physically further apart and like this on the stage makes the situation different. So apart from also having microphones, I mean the physical placement of our bodies matters, and I think I hadn't really thought about that during our rehearsals, so I should try to think about that next time.
Step 4, the response group tell their opinions. And the format for that is to ask for permission to say your opinion. I have an opinion about, for example, the tempo in the end of this tune. Do you want to hear it? And then the artist can say yes or no if they want to hear your opinion or not.
I have an opinion about the rubato part of the tune. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I felt that from time to time, not all the time, but sometimes it felt a bit messy to me, and it was not. I did not experience that you were only like in your own instrument, which is also the thing that can happen. But maybe that you weren't like that. You just listened to some of each other and not the whole sound altogether. Which is of course very, very hard to do and to practice, because it's always different when you get on a stage and line up and have different monitor sounds and stuff like that. But that's also a thing you have to learn how to handle as a musician.
Yeah, I have an opinion about how you were placed on the stage. Do you want to hear it? I felt it was very good thing that, I don't know if you thought about it, but it was 2 girls and 2 boys, and then by a girl, so it wasn't like the girls' corner and the boys' corner, because the 2 singers were mixed, and that was a very good thing, I think. It just got super stuck with in some strange way.
In between talk, like I have an opinion about that. Do you want to hear it? Because I felt that when you say something, when you said like we are lying on stage or whatever you said, like then I start. What Frida said also, you start to think, what are they lying about? What is true? What you set the ball rolling kind of in the audience head, or in my head at least, and then you and then you think about that throughout the performance. I don't mean like it was the only thing I thought about, but every time you were talking, I was thinking like, are they trying to fool me? Are they trying to talk to? Or is it like an internal joke? Yeah. Is that an opinion? Did I say an opinion? No.
Finally, want to hear how you experience this and what you bring with you for your future work. I know you will have a concert in 2 weeks again. So what will you focus on?
I feel like we have those 2 weeks now to prepare for the next concert, and we got a lot of very specific tools that we can just use. Like everything that has been mentioned here, I guess we like the way we stand in our practice room. Maybe now it's also the time for us to focus on some details and talk about what we want, how we want to sound, and not only focus on like, okay, we have to finish the arrangement, we have to play it right. So now is the pleasure time of making music.
I agree with what has been said, and I also think about the opinion regarding the rubato part, that I can see that it can be experienced as a bit messy because we haven't put in a lot of work into it, and also from our side maybe we aren't as focused or serious while we're playing it. I can see now when I really think about it, and that's not really fair to the music, because the music starts when it starts, and it doesn't start when the time signature is set. It starts when we're on stage. So we should be a bit more serious regarding that piece, and not only we're playing some background thing. So we should always perform as much as the one singing the lead in this case.
Thank you very much to the artist. And thank you, response group, for taking time.
Ja. Nej, den bara när vi pratar.
Är vi tillbaka? So, welcome back to the live streaming here from the Academy of Music and Drama in Gothenburg. Peter and I will just tell a few words about how we use CRP in our teaching and in the courses here. I will give a few examples from the World Music Program, where we have, for example, the third-year students preparing for their examination concert, where they do a few pilots on the way, shorter concerts where they practice and test ideas of different combinations of music and presentations. And during these pilot sessions, we use parts of CRP for giving and getting feedback, and it has been a very strong and fruitful tool for the process of reflecting of what is working well and what can I change in my work to the examination concert. We also have planned to change the main instrument examination this year. With ideas from students, we will do that in a setting with student and teachers together, where a small group of students perform, doing their kind of examination performance, which is 10 minutes of music, and then we will do a CRP session together in the group with students and teachers, a bit similar to what we have seen here as well. And we think that also will enhance the tools for the students to reflect and process their own learning about their main instrument and their goal ahead.
So I think we use it as you a little with the students. You had your weekly assignment in the first part of your first semester, where you learned it, and we used it as a critical response process. But we also use it later in the education when you do your own performance, your own full-blown 30-minute show. I use it a lot, I think, like an approach. Sometimes I do just first and third step, statement of meaning and artist and questions from the response group, and not letting the artist answer them. And also I think I use it for like a technique, something I use in my one-to-one teaching, not mentioning it. I just do it. I don't tell you I do it, but I think you know I do it sometimes or sometimes not. I tend to now, since I've worked with it a couple of years, to say statements of meaning and then I give feedback. And I think that works good. I also do something which is, like I say, I'm going to tell you something about the rhythm, and then I do it. I don't do it, I give a little heads up, which is from this technique, I think. And I think it also led me to ask more what you want to ask me about. I don't think I used to do that so much as I do, and I didn't trust it as much as I do today. Maybe when I started, I just did it because it was, you're supposed to do that. Now I know the power of it, because I learn a lot from your knowledge, from what kind of question you ask me. So it's a very good tool for me to get to know a little what's going on inside your heads. So it's questions are good, and I also think students tend to know what they want to work with, and if I can support that, the learning outcome will be stronger, I think. So I use it that.
Okay. I also I see a strong connection with coaching, where, for example, step 3, the responder pose questions, and as you said, if you have this approach to learning and teaching, you will very often find moments where it's useful to put neutral and open questions. For example, what happened during this performance you just made? What did you experience, and what can you learn from that? It's very similar to step 3 in the critical response process.
Yes, yes. I can also recommend it to use on teenagers. It works very well. I do it with my daughter in her homework, and before that it was a kind of catastrophe. She locked me out. But now we do this, and I'm quite welcome. But I have to keep on topic. Just answer the questions, not go ahead. She's very concerned with that. Let me see. Yes, and I also I think the part as a facilitator is a very good training as a teacher. What I do when I facilitate is something in the layer of my job, which is the communication. Not knowing my subject only, but how to deal with the communication and the supporting, and how to support and vad heter utmana? Challenge, to support and challenge you. That kind of, because as a facilitator, it should not only be a nice, good run for the artist. I should push you a little to get into new areas, and very many good tools that I have met there and picked up and use now in my teaching. So let's move over to some more open questions about critical response process, and we will also open for you out there in the world who by the chat can ask questions, and we will hear them and try to answer them as good as we can. So chat away. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, well, I've always wondered why it's not possible, like, not possible, but why we don't have a discussion during the CRP
Yeah.
Because the facilitator could always,
Yes,
But
yes,
it
we
makes
blocked
sense.
the
Yeah.
blocked the discussions. Yes, yes. Do you want to answer that?
Yes, as I understand it, and what I also hear from people that have been participating is that it's about ownership. You transfer the ownership to the artist when you also leave the decisions by the artist. So if you don't end up in defending your ideas or your choices or arguing about different aesthetics, that also leaves it more open to the artist to listen, take in, and store all the things that they get from the process. And then afterwards you can process it and choose what you want to use and what you want to leave out. And that's easier if you don't end up in a dialogue and crosstalk. So it eases the process, and it's also about calmness, I think. You can, as an artist, rely on, I never need to respond in a way that I might have done in another setting. So you can relax in your role as listener and do the choices and the processing later. At least that is one aspect on it.
Yeah. And there's always after.
Yeah.
You can always discuss after. But it's and that, and also not losing speed and power for the process. It's like a leakage. So we want to go on. The discussion tends to kidnap the process a little. And that's why we blocked them. Any other questions?
Well, I have one. It's about the importance of getting the permission from the artist to actually give your opinion.
Yeah.
I sort of understand why it's important, but still, the artist always has the opportunity to say no. I don't want to hear it. So what are your thoughts about that permission?
Yes. I remember we have this our little club where we practiced the first couple of years. I remember there was one of the other teachers who participated, who was her comment after the process was that she could never have imagined the power of having that possibility to say no. She said it was surprised immensely. She's been in the process for like 4 or 5 times, but never in the role as an artist. So when that happened, she was surprised from the power, and also that you can. I mean, maybe you know what happened. Maybe it's about the costume, and the costume is. These are not the costumes. That's my sweaters or whatever. It's not the topic.
I think it's also about enhancing this idea of. I lost the thread now.
So let's have another question. Yes.
Jag ska prata svenska.
Yeah.
Så Ida kan
Adel.
Translate.
Det finns i processen något som heter time-out.
Yes.
Hur kan vi kontrollera om det fortsätter time-out varje minut? Om det bara blir time-out.
So there's this what's it called?
The timeout?
The timer can the facilitator can do a timeout.
Yes.
And what happens if there's and that's to explain the process. And what happens when there are just timeouts after timeouts after timeouts?
How can we control?
But it's only it's not everyone. Very early, you might have the right to do timeouts because you were learning the process. But after just a little while, it's not like that. If you do the process not for learning but to contribute to work, you can't do the timeout. Only the facilitator can do the timeout. So that's how we control it. Because if it's too many timeouts, the power of the process will get lost. So we don't want to lose that. So I think sometimes it's important for timeout if someone jumps the protocol and we have to make a timeout, or we need to clarify something, because sometimes we do it with people who haven't done it before and they wonder a little. But I think it tends to be quite a few once you learn the basics.
Yeah, and in the beginning it might be needed, as you said, and it's also about the learning. You still, if you take timeouts, you learn about how to speak about artists and art and learning. So it's the timeouts are also a part of that, to learn the process and how to talk about learning and art, I would say.
Mm. Any other questions?
I got one. The facilitator. Is it possible for the facilitator to do anything else but facilitate? To, like,
yes.
questions or so?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to move I change seats when I'm the facilitator, and when needed, I change seat and I say, come, we change places, and I become part of the response group. And I do that when I think there's a need for, like, putting more energy into the protocol, into the move of the session. So I like vitamins, or it's my job to see that the artist gets something with her or him from the session. And maybe we talked about something when we started before, like what's interested for you, what you're working with now. And once they're in the session, they don't touch upon that because it's too tricky or it's scary, or they just forget it. So then I can skip seats to bring that in, or I can also ask follow-up questions and ask people, do you have a follow-up question on that, or you had a question, you were moving but we couldn't take it, please do it now. So I move around, definitely. How do you do?
Yeah, when needed, when you also feel that there might be a question that is really on the topic for the artist, then you can, if it doesn't come up, I can switch. As you said, it's even easier to show it in the room, to move your body to another place and take another position and say, now I'm moving out of the facilitator's role, and I can ask a question and then move back, which makes it a bit more clear.
Mm. Mm. So do we have any questions from the chat? None? Okay. So any last question from you, and then we start talking about what you pick up and learn from this.
Yes, in the first step, when you have to ask for permission to give an opinion, if you get a yes, so you can say your opinion, why can't you combine it with, say, suggest a solution?
Ah, yeah, that's nice. I like that. That's a good question, because we're so used to that, aren't we? We see a problem, and then we say, there is the problem and here is the solution. That's how we tend to act. We combine those two. We think it's their package, but they're not. If you don't give the solution, and you say there's a problem there, and I hold back my solution, I will leave the solving of the problem to the artist. If I give them the solution, I will rob them from the creative moments. I will say, okay, now this is my process. I'm part of this, so I will do that. Of course, you can do it, but many times I think you should not. It's better if someone else, if they solve their own problems, So just adding it, and therefore we separate them. So we say I have an opinion about scene 3, the entrance in scene 3. Do you want to hear it? Yes. And I say my opinion, and I say, and I also have a fix it. Do you want to hear it? And I have to have a yes on that too. And I think a lot of the time we should maybe not say the solutions. Actually, we take something away from the artists, in my point of view. So I would say that's why. Should we talk a little about what you've been doing this now for not half a year, but like 5 months, 4 months? So in general, more general terms, what do you think you picked up? Did it have any influence on you, beside from now you know how to do this? I mean, you know it very well. You could probably facilitate a session on your own if you had some papers and you know how to do it. But what do you think you pick up? How does it influence you?
Well, when you have an opinion, when I have an opinion, I think it's important that I say it as my opinion and not as a general truth.
Yes.
I pick that up because that's really hurtful. If you say something as a general truth.
Yes. You state your point of view instead of saying it's the truth is that you should actually stand a little to the left.
Yeah, precis.
Yes. Yes. Please.
I feel that everyone in the process becomes so much more attentive, maybe, to what they have seen or what they have done, other than just was it good or was it bad. Because I feel that a lot of times I will look for if someone liked it or not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't kind of pick up on anything else.
Yes. And that's natural. I mean, we want to know if they like it or not, but you can't really go on working with something from, I like this. Good, nice. It's like a hug. It's nice and warm, but you can't do anything with it regarding your work. So you need more. We need opinions.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Jonas?
But critical response process also creates this kind of comfortable atmosphere for the artist, where the artist can feel that the audience is really there for them. It gives them the opportunity to evolve their work.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, and also like for myself, just to work with how to phrase a question, and also like how to phrase a question so that it's as open as possible. That has been very interesting.
Tell me a little more.
Well, just to not say a question that can be answered with yes or no.
Yes.
So that the person actually has the opportunity to give more of an answer, and you can get out more of your question by actually having it being more open. Just a yes or no question, which has been also quite hard to do sometimes because we're so used to asking, or I'm so used to asking questions like, "Did you like that?" or "How was that part?"
So you're more specific now in the question.
Yeah.
Does it also influence the way you ask questions to yourself?
I haven't thought of that, but yeah, maybe.
If you could ask questions to other people, you
probably.
could probably ask them to yourself in another way too. Not asking, was it good?
Yeah, exactly.
But asking for other qualities, more specific things that you need for your work. Yes. Yes?
I think it also is important because we're so used to, like Ida said, if we see something, we always think in terms of good or bad. that in this process we really learn how to get as far as possible away from those kind of words, and instead think about, well, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I not enjoying this? And what is it that makes me not enjoying this?
Yes.
Or if I do enjoy it, what is it that makes me enjoy it? And I think also when I see a play like just here outside, I also I don't think anymore like, yeah, I liked it, it was good. I'm more like, okay, I wonder what the thoughts were on the ending, or I enjoyed it because the actors were this, or the yeah. So yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Nina. Yes. I think it's fascinating how quickly that move from good bad goes. Actually, from we all start with it, but it only took you a couple of weeks to not be so interested in only good bad, at least. Like good bad should be the opinion. Was it good? Is an opinion. Was it bad? But the feedback, the other thing, the practical thing, the concrete things, that's what we can adjust what we do from. It's very tricky to adjust from good or bad to move on. Yes. Yes, Ida, please.
Yes, I think it's important maybe to mention as well that the first time we did it, it was very difficult. It was because it is actually trying to change your how your brain functions in a way. And so but then just the second time around, things came, or it was more natural. We kind of understood the process, and then by the third time, I felt like everyone was in the process.
What was it that had changed?
Yeah, I think it's both what we saw and how we expressed it. Yeah, so it was a personal change as well as a change towards how we talk to each other about certain performances, or everything within the art sphere. So, but I don't really know what changed in my brain, but it was like there was more color. So yeah.
Yes. More colors, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. More colors, I think, you also get from the first step, with statement of meanings. When there is a wide variation of things that have been said, from technical things to I like that scene to it made me think about. Actually, I think for a lot of people, the emotional things that people tell them about, it made me think about my mother, or I had this strong, terrifying remembrance or whatever, is actually very helpful, because you know then that your material actually touched someone, and in a way that's also what we want. We want to be skillful, but we want to reach out and touch someone's heart.
That means that also the non-professionals within our field can contribute and be a part of the process.
Yes.
Because all statements of meaning is interesting for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yes. So it's about time.
Well, thank you everybody for supporting this session together. Thank you, students. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Jonas.
And thank you to everybody who has listened and watched this lecture. We will put out the links, which you might see now. We will put it out so you can have it on the site, and also the PowerPoint, which we have been using during this presentation, will be accessible there.
Yes, and if you want to know more about critical response process, remember there's always Erasmus teachers mobility, and we don't need to fly business class.